Welcome, Maker. You're listening to Solo in the Shop. In this episode, I'm presenting my top 10 list of the tools you need in your shop. Whether you are a hobbyist, weekend warrior, making commissions for friends and family, or already a full-time maker, if you are solo in your shop, this is the show for you. I'm Ronald Lowe's, the host of Solo in the Shop, a woodworking podcast discussing everything from current projects, tools and techniques, decisions around running a small business, and much more. So if you frequently find yourself alone and covered in sawdust, follow my journey and we can be solo in the shop together. Despite being the end of April, winter seems to be hanging on here at the lake house. There's a howling wind and it's only about 40 degrees. I really love working out in the driveway, but it is just too cold these days. So hopefully wherever you are, you're nice and warm. I suspect in a couple weeks it'll be wonderful here, but still multiple layers trying to stay warm while I'm working. Today's episode, I wanted to talk about tools. Specifically, I have a top 10, there's actually 12 things, but a top 10 list of basic tools for building furniture. I build tables, but these same tools should suffice for most woodworking projects. There's a lot of woodworking that I see online that features gigantic table saws and planers and tools that are just thousands of dollars and yards of square footage. And for us that are solo in the shop, that's not always realistic. So I have a list of 10 tools that I think make building furniture doable and affordable. The first one is a sliding miter saw. And for me, that is my go-to. I feel like I have the most control over that. I am very comfortable adjusting it if it ever gets out of square, and I can make very accurate cuts with that. I used to have a 10-inch blade version, and I recently upgraded to a 12-inch because I kept running into times when either I was cutting at 45 degrees or I was just cutting thicker material, and with the 10-inch blade, I couldn't get all the way through it. So I went to the 12-inch. Usually I keep an 80-tooth blade on there so that I can do very fine cuts and minimize how much sanding I have to do and minimize tear out. The price for the 12-inch that I have was $479, and you can certainly find good sliding adjustable miter saws that are anywhere from $350 to $550. If you get into the 600 plus range, now you're kind of top of the line for that. And I don't know that you get a whole lot more other than maybe a laser or a shadow line, things like that. So that's my first one. Then that's like I said, my go-to tool for pretty much every project starts at the miter saw. The second thing is a track saw or just a regular skill saw, circular saw with some kind of straight edge. I have a 6-foot metal level that I use as a straight edge, and it certainly can be clamped in place to allow me to get a nice long rip cut that's really straight. When I started building tables, I did invest in a real track saw, but prior to running this as a full-time business, I just used a regular circular saw and a straight edge. So you need some kind of setup for making a long rip cut. Skill saws anywhere from $130 to $170, and I prefer corded. I've tried cordless and I burnt one out the first time I used it. That may have just been a bad experience. I can't say that's an indictment for all cordless skill saws, but I will say when you get to cutting thicker material, having a few extra amps is critical. The next thing is just a drill and some drill bits. I prefer my cordless drill. I also recommend that if you are getting into cordless, that you decide on one battery platform and use it across your tools. I personally settled on Makita. I don't know that it's better or worse than anything else, but what I do like is that all my tools use the same battery platform. When one dies, I can just swap out batteries. I have a few extras that I keep on the charger, and it keeps things moving. So a basic drill and bits. Where you might not be drilling a whole lot of holes, what's really key is drilling those pilot holes to prevent splitting wood, and drilling, for me, 3/8 inch recess so that I can plug it and make those screw heads disappear. Related to that is I have a cordless driver. That's my fourth item. Is I have an impact driver. Again, it's Makita, and I have both Phillips hex. I also have Torx bits for that, and I use that every day, and I love it. The battery on that, for some reason, lasts forever. When I'm using that, I'll use it for 3 weeks before I have to recharge. So that's one of my favorite tools. And again, it's only about $100, so it's a very worthwhile investment. The next one is, this is my number 5, is some kind of table saw. Now, obviously, if you had the space and the budget, saw stop, cabinet quality table saw would be fantastic. But for me, I have just a basic construction grade table saw. They sell table saws with 8¼ inch blades, but I definitely would say go with the 10-inch blade. That's kind of the standard. And then look at how many amps the table saw has. The more amperage you have, the better it's going to handle thicker material, some binding, things like that. You want some horsepower behind it. Table saws are one area where there is a wide range of prices, where you can start probably in the $150 range. I would say a $300 table saw is probably the right choice, but you can get fancy and go up to $600 or more. The next tool, number 6 on my list, is a good plunge router. A lot of routers these days come with 2 bases. So if you find that and that's something you like, that works too. So if you want to have the option to keep a fixed base and then switch out and have the plunge mechanism, but I use the plunge feature all the time. It's just how I like to get into the wood. It's very, I can position it and it's very accurate with dropping it into a certain spot. Again, amperage matters, and routers is one area where the amperage varies a lot, anywhere from 6 to 12 to 15 amps, and that correlates to the cutting power. And so you can expect to be able to take a bigger bite with the higher amps and chew through material a little faster. All of these plunge routers are in the $200 to $250 range. So find the amperage and the brand that you like and just have one of those ready. Number 7 on my list is a random orbital sander. I prefer the hook and loop attachment. We'll call it Velcro, but they call it hook and loop. And again, it's a $100 tool, and it's great for minimizing sanding, scratches, tool marks, and it's definitely a go-to when you get up into the 180 grit, 220 grit. You want to be able to get a very nice, smooth surface, and having that random orbital sander is the way to go. Number 8. Not everybody goes for this. I strongly recommend it. Is having a good jointer. It doesn't have to be a beast like a Grizzly or a Powermatic, but even a benchtop jointer is going to make your table saw that much more valuable. The key is to get one good, true, square, and straight edge, and then make all your other cuts off of that. A spiral or a flat-bladed jointer is going to be anywhere from $350, $400. Some of them you can buy replacement heads that have the helical blades on them, but out of the box, a flat one, $350 to $400, and a good helical head jointer is going to be closer to $1,300, $1,500. So if I'm solo in the shop just getting started, I'm going for the $350 to $400 option. Coming to the end here, we got the number 9 item is a benchtop planer. Again, there are flat-headed options, there are helical heads, but something so that you can get the top and bottom of pieces of lumber to be parallel to each other. Critical when you're working with rough sawn wood from the hardwood supply store. And a good benchtop planer, unfortunately, is going to be $700 to $800. Again, go with the brand that you like. Look at the amperage to make sure that, it can handle the load that you're planning to put through it, but it's a great investment for your shop. Number 10 on my list is a decent bandsaw. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that bandsaw is one of my weaknesses, and it's not because of the quality of the tool. It's just how much time I spend working on it. I have a Porter Cable benchtop bandsaw, and it serves me just fine. I use it for smaller work. I don't use it for resawing wood. I have a shop that I can go to if I need to resaw something and use a big 14-inch resaw bandsaw. But for my shop, there's some occasions where I need the bandsaw, and a $200 to $300 bandsaw that sits on your bench or sits on some wheels is a huge help in the shop. A note on bandsaw blades, it's worth experimenting a little bit with the different depths and tooth counts to see what blades are going to work best for you and for your applications. Obviously, if you have a high tooth count that's making a very fine, precise, clean cut, but it's going to struggle to get through thick material. And if you have a lower tooth count and maybe a deeper band size, so let's say it's, a 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch deep, you'll be able to chew through thicker material, but you might not be able to make sharp turns. And so it really depends on how you plan to use the bandsaw. And obviously keep multiple options in blades in your shop so you can switch them out if your needs change. It's not a huge expense, and it's not a huge deal to change blades. So those are my top 10. I'm going to run through them real quick. Again, the sliding miter saw was number 1. Track saw or skill saw with a straight edge is number 2. Number 3 is a drill and bits. Number 4 is an impact driver with Phillips hex and Torx bits. Number 5 is your table saw. Number 6 is a plunge router. A random orbital sander is number 7. A benchtop jointer came in at number 8. Number 9 is a benchtop planer. And number 10 is the bandsaw. Now, I promised a couple bonus items. When I got into building tables and trying to make a living doing this, I spent money on 2 things. One, I regret, and I'm going to suggest the upgrade version. And the first, I love. So number 11 on my top 10 list is the Festool Rotex 150. This is a sander. It is heavy, but it chews through material like nobody's business. It is fantastic when you have a lot of sanding to do. Get that Rotex going. It makes quick work of it. It is expensive. It is $670, but it is a magnificent beast when it comes to sanding. It makes a lot of dust. So number 12 on my top 10 list is a dust extractor. It's a HEPA plug-in dust extractor, which means that I'm plugging the tool into the dust extractor. I'm plugging the hose from the dust extractor into the tool, and the dust extractor powers on when you turn the tool on, and it shuts down shortly after turning the tool off. Now, I really recommend the Festool dust extractor. It's a little pricey. It's $419, and you can go up from there depending on what you want to add on to it. I did not initially get the Festool version. I bought a knockoff, and it works, but the Festool version has a grounded hose that handles static discharge perfectly. The one I bought does not, and the hose will not only shock me, but it will arc in a way that it shocks the sander, and the sander is sensitive enough to that it shuts off. You just turn it off, turn it back on, you can keep going, but to avoid that headache, it is worth looking at the Festool dust extractor and get that security and that consistency of having the grounded vacuum hose. So that's my top 10 list. If you agree, disagree, have suggestions for things that should be on the list, feel free to drop me an email at solointheshop@gmail.com. In the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again soon. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to me at SoloInTheShop@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got value from it and would like to help the show grow, I'd appreciate a review wherever you listen. Be sure to check the show notes for links to my socials or any extra stuff we discussed today. Until next time, stay safe in your shop, and we'll talk again soon.